Hi, it's Xavier, welcome to a bonsai retreat. Do you know what? This isn't my retreat. This is actually somewhere that actually does real bonsai. Many of you may have noticed that when I was here with Yella a few weeks ago, I had my eye on this particular juniper. And bear in mind, we were also doing a thing about when you want to pick a juniper, pick something that's going to be easier to style. A Chinese juniper in this instance. Yeah, and after a lot of thought, I thought, Zav, let's go back. It's a bargain. It really is the sort of thing that I'm ready to deal with. So I've come back today. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that juniper's still going to be here, because do you know what? When you see it close up, you'll know why I'd be worried about someone sort of getting hold of it before me. So I'm going to pop inside, and hopefully my dreams are going to come true.
And the dreams that you dare to dream.
And if they don't, well, there's that corkbark elm I saw, and I do believe there might even be this incredible Scots pine there.
Really do come true.
So if you want to see just how good a bargain I've got, and just what sort of challenge is going to be facing me in the retreat, you need to keep watching. Because I'll tell you one thing, I even get the opportunity to chat to Corin while he's styling, and we get to meet the hidden brother, Paul. Let's go in, shall we? Now, according to Corin, it's now actually been moved up to his, I don't know why we call it the bargain section. I must ask him that actually, because I keep looking at the trees on there and they're incredible. You can see they're quality trees. They just normally got a branch or two missing or some sort of mishap. But certainly nothing to think that you're getting cast off bargains and stuff like that. I've seen it up at your bargain bench.
Yeah.
In fact, I noticed a couple of things about that. There's some really cracking trees on there. In fact, there's a lot of good stuff on there. What helps you with the decision for what goes on there?
There's all sorts of reasons. We've got 4 main retail sales benches here, and that juniper you were looking at was a tree that was one of a batch of 6 that we sold or we had for sale about 12 years ago. And I think one got sold, it went to an individual. They got out of bonsai. When it came back to us, it needed a bit more TLC and a bit of sort of repotting on and a bit of pruning, some dead wood taking out of it, that sort of thing. So when a tree comes in like that, if we deem it not really, not really 100%, perhaps not completely worthy of going on our retail bench, then it goes on the sort of the projects bench, the clearance bench. Because it might just be in a ceramic pot, but the pot's cracked. It might be ready for repotting. It might be in a plastic pot. The good thing with that is that bench, the trees on that bench are always sold at a good price. It's a project tree bench, We've just cleared an area around the back, an old netting tunnel that had been a bit of a sort of overspill area, and some stuff had languished in there a bit longer than it needed to. So we've cleared a lot of those trees out and offered them at a better price, and we've probably got maybe 3,000 or 4,000 trees here, and when you're dealing with that number of trees, you'll get the odd one where it's dropped a branch or something's happened to it, or it's blown off the bench in the strong winds we had and one side snapped off, and you get a tree, it was on the bench. It might have been on the bench at £300, it's blown off the bench, 2 of the branches are snapped off, laid on the floor, so I can't put it back on the bench at £300, half of it's missing. So I think to myself, well, that's, it's just circumstance, and you think, well, I look at it as you would look at it, as a customer would look at it, and think to myself, well, what's a £300 tree worth with 2 snapped branches that you can regrow? Yeah. But it might be a 5-year project. I can't put it in the back for 5 years to then bring it back out once I've done that work. So sometimes I think, well, if I was a customer, I'd pay £120 for that £300 tree with 2 branches that have just fallen off.
That's way too good of a deal.
So I price it up at £120, and then people come and say, that's a good price. Yeah, because the pot's a 60 quid pot. And I say, I know. And they're like, can I have it? And I say, yes. Some people, it gives them a way of attaining a tree that if it was in perfect condition, they wouldn't maybe be able to afford or want to afford. So, it's much like You know, it's like buying a car that's, you know, somebody's reversed into a lamppost and it needs a new bumper on it. You're not going to pay top money, but you can find a bumper on the internet and you can fit a new bumper yourself, and you're like, now my car's fine. And it's cheaper than the one that wasn't damaged. You know, so it's the same sort of thing.
It's a weird analogy, but yeah.
There's all sorts of trees that go on there. You know, we had a collection in from somebody that's retiring from bonsai, and you know, some of the trees were nicely turned out and they're in bonsai pots, and you think, well, that's a nice shape, and we put it on the retail bench for sale. But there will be trees that came in from that collection where, you know, the owner's got it planted in a washing up bowl. But then I think, well, I don't want a tree in a washing up bowl on my main bench.
Yeah.
But I'll put it on that bench down there, and you know, someone can buy it, and then they've got it, and then when the time comes, they can repot it into a bonsai pot and just go from there.
I mean, it's incredible. You look at this Chinese juniper on this stump, and it's been marked down. I'm not going to go into the prices, because anyone who knows their bonsai will look at that and go, yeah, that's quality. I can do some project work on that and put it back up to its true value. And I think you remember with everything on these benches, their real values are probably twice what the labels are. It's just you might have to regrow a branch. Can't believe this. It's raining again. But yeah, this Genko, only £40. It's actually really interesting. I love Genko, and if you haven't seen any of my Genko videos, there's a link up there. But yeah, I'm discovering the joy of Genko. So anyway, this isn't helping me find that juniper, is it? Let's go find it, shall we? Well, here it is, and it's definitely not the red eastern cedar variety or anything, and it's Chinese juniper for sure. I can already see some nice tight foliage pads on it, and I think what I'll do, and this is the advice I give to anyone who's buying anything from a nursery, is if you've got the opportunity to speak to the professional, certainly the big professional, like say in this instance Corin, then if you're going to look at spending any sort of money on a tree, and don't think just because it's only £20 or £30 you're embarrassed to ask the questions, because I'm going to go see Corin now. I'm going to find out, can I repot it now, because we're now coming to the early part of autumn. What sort of care it's at, what sort of history it is. You might have some tips and hints that are going to help me and stop me making an absolutely stupid mistake. So let's go and see Corin, because it's raining now. But this, absolutely magnificent. And I'm not afraid to tell you, I'm paying £450. But I think you'll probably find it's worth twice that, once it's in a decent pot and healthy.
You overestimate yourself.
It's worth a go, isn't it? Yeah, so I hope you do all right with it anyway.
You know, part of me says I could probably leave it to next spring. You know, I was thinking if I sort of put it into some pumice, didn't play around with the roots particularly much, but just got it into a much more drainier, and then leave it for a year.
Yeah, that would be a good thing to do.
And I appreciate you don't know my conditions and what the garden and how I care for things, so I'm just taking this as a...
Well, for years we've done a lot of autumn repots on evergreens. You know, we did a video last week on a juniper. You know, trimmed it, repotted it, wired it, styled it. It's
all that is.
It's a non-issue.
Yeah.
So what we're now, just the beginning of October, so sort of middle of October, we do a lot of that sort of work. You know, it means that I can concentrate on deciduous stuff in spring. So if you were going to repot that tree any time in the next couple of weeks, tomorrow, day after, take your time. I don't think that's an issue at all. You know, you can remove roots at this time of year, but you're unlikely to need to on that particular tree. So again, that's even less of an issue, isn't it? So yeah, you'll be able to work on that, no problem at all.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Hey, that phone must be telling you you need it elsewhere.
Time to go.
All right.
3 jobs at once.
Anyway, thanks for that.
That's all right.
Go 450 quid now.
All right, okay. Pound coins, is it?
50 pence pizza. Hey, 1 penny pizzas.
I heard you rattling when you walked up.
It's me pacemaker. Right there. Right, well, I've committed to it, and it's a lovely Chinese juniper, and is that £45?
You're so funny.
Almost. Okay, well, I think you can read that better than I can. So this hasn't been out for a very long time, actually. Actually, this is where it doesn't work.
There you go.
Okay. I'll say this now, what I have paid for it's an absolute bargain, and anyone who doesn't come to Greenwoods and realise they've got some fantastic trees at fantastic prices is a fool. So get over here.
Who you calling fool?
Right, there you go, thank
Brilliant. You're a scholar and gentleman. Thank you very much. I mean, look at this. This is a lot of tree. And the first thing we're going to do, get it home, 30 minutes away, and let's get it into some new soil. And what did I do while I was here? I took advantage of the expert advice that I could get while I was here, because although I think I know things, it's always good to check with other people. And I've been recommended to do a third of basically Pumice, Akadama, and if there was Kiryu, I don't have that, but I'm going to be using my Zeolite. So let's get back to the retreat and do that. But I've got a big grin, and I bet you can understand why. Well, here we are back in the retreat, and yes, it doesn't matter. They know I'm doing a bonsai video, so out come the drills, the hammers, everything. But you know what? I've got to get this thing potted up. I've waited 3 hours because of the rain we had. I cannot believe how big this is. I know I haven't got the blue screen in, apologies, it's all blending in. But really, let's get this into some decent soil, and when it's all done, I'll give you a spin when it's in a better location. But this is pretty daunting for me. I don't think I've ever done a repot this big. The tree's heavy. Ideally, for health and safety, you know what? I should have another person present. But Alex is working. And I bet when he hears this, he'll say you should have called me. Now, the first thing we're going to be doing, I just want to get a lot of this muck off the top. I just want to have a look and see, one, how it's attached down. There's clearly some wires here. Some of them have been cut, but there's another big wire here. So I'll be cutting the wires so that I can lift this out. And then we'll have a little look at the roots. But lots of weeds here. Want to get all the weed matted stuff off. In terms of how much root ball I'm going to take away, well, truthfully, I'm hoping I don't have to take anything, if very little, away. I want to do as little disturbance with this tree now as I can. And I think that's probably a great time to talk about the big thing that certainly I think I've been putting out on recent videos about juniper and pine. The risk versus benefit on doing your late summer, early autumn repot. Now, I'm not a professional, but I have got over 25 junipers and pines. I have been doing it for 22 years, and I have had success doing my repots at this time of the year. Not a week or so earlier, but I have had no problems with any of my trees. But what I am going to say, and it's something that was brought up by Corin, unfortunately I didn't have things running, but we discussed the merits of doing these pots, the merits of doing repots and things like this out of what you would call the traditional established time frames. And you know, I probably bet that 80-90% of people do all their repots at some point through the spring. And I think with junipers it's often in the later part of spring as we're heading towards May. And I'll say so, you know, for the first sort of 15 years, that's when I did them. Now, this isn't a right or wrong, and there's going to be a lot of people going, hey, Zav's now going to upset a few people. Well, you know what, I'm not. I think what I am going to say, and it's something that was brought up in our discussion, is that sometimes you do have to look back and go, why is it that 90-95% of professionals practice over the ages pick that time of the year? Because it works over a percentage quantity of trees. Now, I've got, as I say, a fair number of trees. Out of my 10 or 15, if one of them or even two of them don't react well to that repot, and that's something that Corin did mention. He'll do his repot, some of them, and he said, yeah, go ahead with this one. But sometimes it's also about looking at the fact that, you know, you've got a high quantity of trees. He's got up to sort of 3,000-4,000 trees. By doing some of his less risky repots this time of the year for his junipers or his evergreens, then it means he can devote more time to his maples and stuff like that that, you know, really do need to get their repots. You have to be looking at your local conditions. They all vary. I say that in a lot of my videos. You know, if you're in America, your autumn is going to be different from your autumn in Grantham. It's going to be different from your autumn way down in Cornwall, or indeed way up in the Highlands. So often you'll know better what your local conditions is. And I think the key is, if you're moving towards the sort of low 10 degrees C going down towards freezing, then really you want to be looking after the roots of your tree. You don't want to be giving them stress and anxiety, and certainly with your junipers, out comes that juvenile growth. And I talked about that in this video there with yellow. We don't want to stress a tree, so if you can avoid going outside of the normal accepted practice, it doesn't hurt. So Even though I'm quite happy to do some in autumn, you know, that's because I've got a high volume of trees. If I try to do everything in spring, stuff just doesn't get repotted. If you've got 2 or 3 trees, hey, I'm the first one to say, wait till the spring, do it then. I think the last thing I'd hate to hear happen is that someone who's very new to this or only has 1 tree goes ahead because they've seen a video that says, yeah, crack on, it's all right to repot in the autumn or whatever, and, you know, they lose their tree. Much better to say, do you know what, I don't know enough about this, I'm going to stick with the established timescales and I'm going to do mine in spring, because that's when most people do theirs. So I think you'd be pretty safe following that. I've got to mix up my pumice, and I've got a bag of Akadama and also some zeolite. The pumice is sort of 10 to 11 mil. Unfortunately, I haven't got the thicker grains of the other ones, but you know, this would be ideal to have the thicker rocks and lumps, so to speak. But anyway, I'm going to mix that up. You've seen people mixing soils, so I'm not going to labour the point. We're going to come back when it's out of the plastic container, because I have a funny feeling my back's going to make some noises you really don't want to hear, or indeed see, if you can see a noise. See in a minute. In fact, while I'm doing that, why don't you join me for a tour around the rest of those trees on his, I say bargain bench, but his quality trees that may have 1 or 2 broken branches, or maybe add a leaf, or anything that makes them less desirable from his main selling benches. I mean, we talk about the bargain bench. I mean, I'm not sure yet what's wrong with this. Is it a beech? Looks like a beech, yeah. But that's absolutely magnificent. Got this incredible pine here as well. And yes, you can already see they're premium trees already, and you know, there'll be something that needs to be done with it. And probably with the amount of trees they've got here, they just haven't got time to give them the due care that's needed. So they're saying to someone else who does have the skills or the desire for a project, hey, I'm going to cut the price by 1/3 or by 1/2, give you a bargain and give you something you can put your mark on. And you know what, with bonsai, a lot of the time that is exactly what we're looking for. I mean, look at this. I think last time when I was here with Yella, we talked about this corkbark elm. I'm very, very tempted to buy it. I'll find out how much it costs actually. There's all sorts of stuff here. So I think what we've got, a little, is that hornbeam maybe? Twin trunk. And I know it would be lovely. We'll think, especially if we're new to the hobby, I just want to get myself something, you know, a sort of pre-bonsai for 20 or 30 pounds. And we see the prices and it scares us. You know, perhaps that's the truth of where we're at these days with the prices of things. But that's not down to Greenwoods or Herons or any of the big retailers. They too have got overheads. Look at this massive Scots pine. This is new, this wasn't here last time. Look at that. Rain's coming down, I better go inside, but I think, yeah, I don't think you'll mind me saying, but that's a steal at £250. If I had room in my van, I'd take it. And trust me, doing something like this alone is sometimes a little bit risky as well, so if you can get help, really go for it. Now they can see the soil is definitely broken down, which would correspond with how long it's been in this for, but old bits of wire, and yeah, definitely broken down a lot, so it's going to benefit from being in a new soil anyway. Wow. You just look at the size of that trunk though. Now there is, I've noticed, just a little bit around here of bark that's got a bit of rot on it. It's to be expected. You know, if something's been left in the darker parts of a garden or nursery, then you're going to have water build up. Again, if the soil is compacted, you then are also going to get water build up, and the chances of problems on the the bark or indeed the roots. Well, I've got it out of there, and in terms of the soil that's here, you might say, what will I do with it? And if you look, it's almost reached the point of mud, but that looks pretty well broken down, so that's when we need to repot. One of the good reasons. This is the first time that I've really spent this much money on a project tree. Normally there's stuff I've dug up for free, all sorts of things like that. So, you know, first of all, it's I'm a bit nervous about it. No need to be. I have got lots of roots in there. Now, I bought a great load of pumice and zeolite with Alex, as you know that, and I think there's a video all about that. And it ended up being that by doing it that way and getting it in bulk, although we still paid quite a bit of money, it meant that the bag of pumice probably ends up retailing for me for, I don't know, £20. Well, I've put one whole bag of pumice and a whole bag of zeolite in my mix ready to go. So be prepared. If you're going to spend the money on material like this, when you do your repot, don't ever think about trying to make savings on your mix. It's not to say it can't work, because I bet there's loads of people out there saying, hey, I've gone fine with my mix. But you know what? If I'm going to spend this much money on a project that I hope is going to turn this into a £1,000 plus tree, I'm not going to go short on the right mix. And that's why I spent already. So that's another sort of probably £50 in the soil mix. Where I'm finding old roots like this that are clearly old and broken, rotting, I'm removing them. But I'm also very aware that where they're digging further down to the soil, I'm not actually going to disturb that. So just stuff that's obviously part of a broken or a dying, perhaps dying trunk. And remember though, we are in the autumn, or late summer, early autumn. We are going to get root production, and one of the benefits that is suggested in this newer approach is that good weather conditions is going to be an optimum time for this tree to say, do you know what, I'm going to repair these root cuts and I'm going to send out more feeder roots from them. So, you know, I'm very, very hopeful that we are actually going to get some really decent growth. So I'm going to keep working my way around this, getting off clumps that I don't like and some downward roots. You know, you've seen lots of repot videos, so I don't need to take this through again. And what I'm really concentrating here is I can see where the nabari of this tree is, and I just want to remove what I think are going to be obvious problem roots already. Right, well, I've got quite a lot of that out. I did remove some bigger roots and some big thick chunky stuff, but I've certainly left at least 80% of that root ball intact. I've put ground layer of pumice in the bottom. I've got some securing wires. I also like to put a smaller grade of the pumice, 4.5mm over the top. To be honest, it's probably a bit overkill, but I've seen it done with Ryan Neal, and you know, with a lot of us we do tend to copy. And that's another warning I'm going to say. Doesn't matter who it is, whether it's me, in fact more so those that are definitely not professionals. Doesn't mean they don't know what they're doing, but it means they may all be very experienced in their own gardens with their own variety of trees, but just be very wary sometimes altering some of the patterns or habits that you might have that might have been successful for you. I always try and let you know who I've got stuff off or who I've got my advice from, and certainly many of you will know that Ryan Neal has been a big influence in how I do my bonsai. And now of course Corin Tomlinson, he's my now next best bonsai guru. So you can get a sense of the roots there. It's okay, and we're just going to drop it in. Now I have got a degree of room with making sure I get the front in there, but let's get this sorted in and get some soil around it. And if you haven't subscribed, that button down there, yellow showed me where it was, hit that, and at least then you'll get a notification. Okay, so pretty well sorted out the air pockets, and I'll just continue to just make sure that there's no areas where old claggy soil is going to stop water going down. You can see you've got lovely root spread, and the colour of this bark is gorgeous. And I'm just going to continue to put some top dressing, well not top dressing, but just some finer grain just to protect the upper roots that are exposed. So my intention is to leave this for a good year. I'm not going to cut any of the branches. Have you got any anything to say about that, Corin?
Get a bit more growth, bit more food, more growth, more growth, more options, better tree.
Now what I will do is say a big shout out and thank you to Corin, Paul and indeed Josh at Greenwood Nursery. They've given me some great tips and advice. They've been ever so friendly. They've let me do some interviews and filming. And do you know what? If you haven't been to Greenwood Bonsai, I implore you, you must visit. It's massive. It's got a lot of stock. Everyone would want to help you if you've got any questions or anything. And don't worry if it's because you're looking for a £10 tree. Just be upfront and honest with what your budget is and what you want and your level of experience. And I mean, Corin, bless him, he spoke to me for well over an hour. I'm sure he had much more important things to do. In fact, I know he did. He had demonstrations and all sorts. And hey, Yella, you said that you thought this would make a good project tree and that it may even be a good reason for you to come over in 2025, later in the year, perhaps to do some initial help with styling and wiring. You up for that? Let me know in the comments. Well, I'm going to be honest, I'm absolutely over the moon. I've never taken on a project this big, certainly on a repot. Am I nervous? Not at all. I got excellent advice, and I'll say it again and again and again. If the advice is there, don't be shy or embarrassed. Ask. Ultimately, if you're buying something, you have the right to get out as much information as you possibly can. Some of you may be saying, Zav, you've got great big branches here. Why don't you get rid of them? And the truth is, no. This tree needs as much foliage as possible now, because that's where the energy is going to come. It's going to come into the foliage, and then that's going to build the roots. I'm not cutting anything off right now. There's a healthy structure in there already. I want to keep as much foliage as possible. And I also want this to continue to grow. I want it to grow out. I want to get the opportunity to get some back budding starting to develop in junctions and things like that. But you know what? We'll talk about more of that in 2025. I think we've done loads today. So no, this great big branch is not going to be taken off. Has it got the potential for an air layer or two next year? Well, I think so. Oh, anyone here thinking, oh no, Zav's put another rock in his pot? No, this is one of the most interesting rocks I actually found on my recent trip to Stronsay. I only brought back 2 or 3, so hopefully the king won't be too unhappy. But that is going to make an absolutely incredible root on rock. And again, you want to see me do that, that's going to happen in the spring. And you need to be subscribed to do that. But I've spoken about that already, so we won't do it again. That's what that's for. And here's an interesting thing. You may be wondering why I've got this wee pot here. Believe it or not, in the 2 weeks that had been between my first seeing this tree and visiting yesterday, I was thinking, have I got a pot for it? And goodness knows why, I actually had this one washed out ready. I thought this was going to be big enough. Just goes to show what happens as you get older. All that's left for me to say is, hopefully you've got something out of this. My biggest takeaway is, you see people doing stuff, you see people like myself doing stuff. I've done 22 years in my garden, different potting techniques and different times of the year. But that doesn't mean it's going to work for you. If you're in all doubt, go for the tried, true and tested. And I think even Corin would agree with me. There isn't much wrong with doing your repots in spring, certainly if you want to be sure of good, steady results. So, before I sign off, I'll say if anyone actually wants to see some of my junipers that I did last year, where I did a lot of root work, put them in some soil, again they were early autumn repots, then you know, I've got just the video for you, and it must be coming up there or there. Watch it, you'll love it. Anyway, happy bonsai and God bless. Keep a smile on your face. Cheers. I know there's a load of you out there going, say, Zav, you forgot to tell everyone the most important thing. You've got to water it, and you've got to water it properly. You've got to make sure all those fines drain out the bottom, so it's going to get a good 5-minute watering. And I'm going to go in for lunch. You really don't need to see this. Love this tree, absolutely love it. This has got to be a good reason to watch the channel in the future, honestly, just to see how this thing gets on.